Hi everyone, welcome back to the Sports Breakdown once again. I'm very sorry for the delay. It was supposed to start at 9:30, but we got about 20 minutes late. But it doesn't matter. I put it on my Instagram story so anyone can join. So today, for the first time ever, we brought Mr. Mark from Murali's End Podcast. So I'm a big fan of that podcast. I've been watching it on Apple constantly. They've been doing marvelous shows, especially on Sri Lanka cricket, and even recently on the IPL review as well, Mega Auctions review, which was brilliant, and they're doing a great job. So that's why I wanted to bring them along to the Sports Breakdown so that you can get their insights as well. And Mr. Mark, thank you so much once again for joining the Sports
Oh,
Breakdown.
no, the pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me, Pawan. This is a great platform you're building over here, and it's great to be involved. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, guys, you can comment on the comment section and I'll take your comments for sure because we are limited with time. So, yeah, please do. So, first of all, we just want to have introduction of how you started the Murali's End and how you came with the concept of the name. That was the most interesting. How did you come up with Muttaya Muralidharan, the Sri Lankan legend, spin legend? Still, for me, I think is the favorite spinner of mine all time for sure, more than Shane Warne as well. But how did you come with the concept of Murali Zen? And I know you're half Indian and half Sri Lankan, so your background a bit and how you got into cricket and your passion for it, and why you love Sri Lanka cricket this much to this day, especially when there's a downfall in Sri Lanka cricket as well.
Yeah, so I'll start off with my story, and then we'll get to Murali End at the end,
Yeah,
and why I
sure,
called
no
it that,
problem.
right?
Yeah.
So I born and raised in London. My dad's from Wellabata. My mum's from North India. They met in London in the 80s. I'm a little bit older than you, but we don't need to go into figures, right?
No need, that's
Um,
fine.
but basically, when I was a kid, I was just sports mad, and I remember my when I was a very small baby. I think my parents took me to the Oval to watch Sri Lanka play England at some point, and I've got very early memories of that, very tiny memories of that. But my first big kind of thing that happened in the cricket world for me was in '96. Right, I
Yeah.
was a small kid. I would have been 10 years old, and I was just trying to figure out what cricket was about, and what team I supported. My mum's family are Anglo-Indian, so they mainly live in London
Yeah.
anyway. They were all
Oh,
trying to get me to support India, and then we were all watching this World Cup, all getting excited about it, and obviously Sri Lanka won it. And my dad and his brother, I remember sitting around watching it with them. They were crying at the end. They couldn't believe it. I mean, in a way, I kind of admire people of your generation, Pavan, because you don't
yeah.
remember what Sri Lanka cricket was like beforehand. Not saying I remember it, because for me that's always like the starting
Yeah.
point, right? But that and look, you got two Sri Lankans talking about cricket. It's not even been 4 minutes, and we've started talking about '96 already. But that was like an awakening moment for
Mm,
not
exactly.
just Sri Lankan cricket terms, but I think in kind of confidence terms as well, right? It was like the arrival off the place as a on the world stage. It had some cultural reverence at some point, relevance across the globe. And then after that, I play rugby. I played it at school and I still play it now.
Mm,
And obviously I'm English, so football is like, I
big.
love live and die for Liverpool Football Club, right?
Yeah.
It's super important to me. But Sri Lanka cricket, it's just always been a special place. And then the story of Sri Lanka around the kind of the mid '90s and onwards. There's obviously some incredible players in the team. Ravinda, Arjun are probably the best captain of any cricket team of ever all time. But
Definitely.
the one player, the standout player in that team is Murali, right? It's Matai Muralitharan. And then for him to all the shit that the Australians give him. Sorry, can I swear on this? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, no
All,
problem. A bit,
cool.
yeah.
All the madness that comes out of Australia at that time, like at the time, it really galvanized Sri Lanka fans, I think, and we were like really wedged in. Suddenly, we had not just a team that we haven't just fluked the World Cup. We've now got this spinner who can get it, who can get wickets all over the world. I, as a child, I feel like this deep injustice for the way that the rest of, particularly the Australian cricket world, are talking about him. I just think he's a genius. And every time when you look back at Murali's career, it's just brilliant. It's just pure brilliance. There's no moment where you just think, right, he's done. He's been sussed out. I mean, he comes out right at the back end of his career with the Dushra,
Yeah.
right, and gets another, I don't know how many hundreds wickets from that. Um, look,
Did you
Sri
watch
Lankan.
that 2006 Test series specifically in England? I think the Oval, I think when he picked up 9 wickets, if I'm not mistaken, in that Test match, it was simply outstanding. So, did you specifically watch that 2006 series very closely?
I watched that series. There was a test in '98. I think I can't remember if it was a one-off test or if there was a
One of
two or
Test,
three.
yeah, it was one
What
of.
the '98 test for me? That's when it totally galvanized it. That was as a child. I still had aspirations of being able to play cricket, even though I can't bloody see the ball when it comes down the wicket.
Yeah,
And I remember all my. So what you have to understand, being a Sri Lanka fan in England at that time was pretty rare. But also, there was still, I think there actually still is, an arrogance of people associated with the English cricket team. And at that point, it was rubbed off into the England cricket fans as well. So they just thought,
yeah,
what are these plucky Sri Lankans doing coming over here? I mean, just imagine they've got the world champions coming over and all they give them is one test. They don't even give them a full test series, right? And
yeah,
then Murali comes in this 98 test and just spins them out of it. I remember when I was a kid, I thought Alex Stewart at that point, I thought was the best batsman England had. He was the only
yeah,
player who could kind of do something against Murali, and all he could do was just try and step out of his crease and pad the ball down. And I was just so proud of what these boys were doing, right? At the
yeah,
time, there's in England, I'm not saying that I was particularly a victim of all this because I was just a child, but you know, people of my dad's generation, the Sri Lankans and you know, other Asian people had just come over in the 70s and 80s. They'd gone through a lot of racism and stuff like that. To have a
yeah,
team coming over to England and tear apart the English Test cricket side the way that Murali almost did single-handedly was absolutely, you know, it was really empowering for a lot of Sri Lankan people over here. And it was a real source of pride, especially when, you know, we don't need to talk about it on this, but if you look at all
yeah,
the other stuff that's going on with Sri Lanka politically at the time, it's not, you know, no one's particularly covering themselves in glory, right? So
true.
to have a player like him come out and, you know, and also I think from a Sri Lankan perspective, the thing about Murali is his background in that team and everything he achieves. I mean, I know you mentioned that my mom's from India, but you know, my mom's from North India. She's not. It's not an ethnic thing at all that I called it Murali.
Yeah,
I just love Murali. I just think he's amazing. I think he's brilliant. I think he galvanized the whole country. I think he was, you know, when you look back at in the period that he played,
yes.
you basically look back from '96 to when did he retire? 2014, I think it was, or
2011, I think 2011.
2011.
Yeah,
He's basically the only constant, isn't he? At
yeah,
that point, he comes all the way through. Also, I remember when they play test matches, when he would just the Murali end, the end part of it is because he'd bowl half the overs, right? So it was like he'd just pick his end, and it was just like coming from that. I mean, it got that, you know, the Shane Warne fanatics have criticised that that tactic, but Sri Lankan cricket exists to win matches, and Murali was a match winner, and that's why I loved it, and he was brilliant. And I
and
like,
that's how you came with the concept of the name as well, the Murali End.
yeah, that's it.
That's great to see. Yeah. Rohan here says England had beaten South Africa just before that one-off test. Murali, Sanath, and Aravinda dominated that Oval test in '98. Yeah, very true.
Yeah,
98 test match was one of the best, I would say, for Sri Lanka cricket, and that made England to make it to 3 test matches in the next series. So that's great. Yeah. And since you spoke about your passion towards Sri Lanka cricket, I just want to know your thoughts on the current Sri Lanka cricket team led by Dasun Shanaka. That downfall period between 2014 2021, and do you see improvement in the Sri Lanka cricket team right now in 2022? So
yeah,
your thoughts on the that rebuilding phase of Sri Lanka once Sangakkara, Kumar Sangakkara, Mahela Jayawardena, T.M. Dilshan, Rangana Herath, all these legends retired. So the rebuilding phase of Sri Lanka cricket.
yeah. So obviously, when those legends retired, I kind of felt, I was like, I think there's enough players here who can kind of carry on. You know, we've got enough. I think what happened is we lost too much, not the talent, but I think we lost too much leadership all left at the same time. It was like the brains of the operation had all gone at the same time. There was too much change.
Yeah,
And where with the previous set of players, they had the talent and the brains to get through it. With a slightly more inexperienced side, and we know that Sri Lanka cricket. I'm not having a go at them for it. I'm just saying we know that they like to get more involved than they maybe should do. Maybe some of the players that were left back weren't able to develop the way we thought they were going to develop. And then the next thing you know is that suddenly players are in and out of the squad. It's difficult to get any momentum and form. And then it's just not a team that is winning what we were used to in that period before 2015. And then I think obviously COVID kind of comes in. Actually, even going in before the lockdown, before cricket stopped, I was starting to see things where I was like, I think there's something coming through together. We'll never forget Kusa Pereira's innings in South Africa. I thought Hasaranga, I thought it was obvious even before COVID that he was going to become some player. I thought, with Mendis and Gunatilaka and all that, there was a bit of talent coming through. And then obviously COVID comes in and stops everything for 10 months, I think it is. Sri Lanka don't play any cricket at all. And then we started Murali End. We started it basically for the Lanka Premier League when that started in November 2021. And I remember thinking before it, I was like, this is going to define the success of this league defines Sri Lanka cricket for the next decade, right? I thought from the get-go, it was more like, obviously, we don't need to talk about the administration, the teams and all that. But the actual what was happening on the pitch, I thought was quite competitive. And you could see that there was enough going on Sri Lankan cricket to make me feel to have hope. Then they started, obviously they went to South Africa. That wasn't a great success. Then England came over last January. That wasn't good either. And then they kind of
happened between Dikwal Gunatilaka and Kusal Mendis, which was the highlighting point, I think, of Sri Lanka cricket in that year.
But actually, in a way, and I think there's a lot of issues around it. I think the punishment was too severe, and I think of classic Sri Lankan parents overreacting. Right, the three kids have gone out for a cigarette and they're bloody throwing the water out and trying to disregard them or whatever. But in a way, the making of Sri Lanka cricket for this current crop was that England tour, and then the India when that India side went over to Sri Lanka in almost immediately afterwards, because they had to bring the young lads in. I remember, for me, the two of the young players in the Sri Lanka squad at the moment who most excite me are Pathum Nissanka and Asalanka. And to me, if what happened in Durham didn't happen, those two boys don't get the opportunities they've had in the last 6 months to have to set themselves up for the careers we think they can have, right? So right now, a day before the India series starts, I'm pretty optimistic about Sri Lanka cricket as it stands right now. I think the boys are doing us all proud.
Very true. So let's get into focus on this India versus Sri Lanka series. But before that, I want to talk about few Sri Lankan cricketers that are coming under the spotlight right now. And first of all, your thoughts on Bhanuka Rajapaksa. First of all, his omission and the hype that's going on in Sri Lanka cricket right now. I mean, amongst the fans, actually, yesterday, going to the Sri Lanka cricket board, and I don't know, this went viral in the SLC headquarters asking, we want Bhanuka back. I agree with this, but first of all, on the fitness levels, I mean, obviously we know now in 2022 they reduced the skin folds from 75 to 6. From 85 to 75, I'm mistaken, and the 2 kilometer run from 8 minutes 35 to 8 minutes 10. And I think in India cricket, what the article I went through, one article, they said for the bowlers is 8 minutes 15 seconds. And for the rest of the cricketers, it's 8 minutes. For the fast bowlers, it's 8 minutes 15, and the rest of the cricketers, it's 8 minutes 30. So, your thoughts on these fitness standards that the Sri Lanka Cricket Board has put this year, and the controversy is going on with Bhanuka Rajapaksa because he retired, then he came back to the squad. Came back to out of retirement, then once again left out for the Australian India tour. So, your thoughts overall on this?
Okay, right. So my thoughts on Bhanuka Rajapaksa are, I think he should definitely be in the squad at the moment for Firstly, I think we actually genuinely need him. I don't think, he hasn't been in the squad since the World Cup, and I think he totally justified his place in it. If you go back a bit, I don't know if you remember I think it was around the England tour when he went to social media. He was calling out Mickey Arthur for not picking him and talking about failed fitness test. I think he should be in the squad, but I also think that having the fitness standards is what Sri Lankan cricket needs, like 100% behind the fitness standards. I think what we do need, though, and where I think the problem is that I think that there's too much of a disconnect between Sri Lankan cricket and the players. I think they should be working with Bhanuka Rajapaksa. They put out the press release before they were going to Australia with the squad, and it just called out Bhanuka Rajapaksa for not having the fitness standards. And again, that's Sri Lankan parenting, isn't it? That is your dad telling you off for not getting the grades, isn't it? It's like, we will all be going to dinner at this restaurant, except Mark will not be going because he failed his test last night, right? And it's the too much, and this isn't just a Sri Lankan cricket issue. I personally feel this is a Sri Lankan issue and a wider Asian issue as well. It's all about shame, isn't it? They're trying to shame Rajapaksa into losing weight, into getting fitter. And from what I can see is that it just doesn't seem to be, this process doesn't seem to be working. I think they need to be working with him, giving him the support he needs, be it personal trainers, be it dietitians, being someone going and living with him. I play rugby, right? And it's not unheard of in rugby clubs that you get players who are struggling with fitness and people go and live with them and make sure they're eating all the right things they should be eating and doing all their exercise. Maybe they've done that. I don't know, but that's what Rajapaksa needs, I think.
Very true. And especially on the Bhanuka story, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they wanted him in the biosecure bubble because I think he passed that 2-kilometer test. But unfortunately, he failed that skin fold test. And it's not easy to lose, 15, on your muscles, to lose 15, it isn't easy, right? In this skin fold test, you measure your centimeters, how much you have. So it's not easy to lose 15. I think they've said that Bhanuka has over 100, if I'm not mistaken. 100 centimeters with his muscle mass, if I'm not mistaken. So, do you agree with the Sri Lanka Cricket Board, especially for the skin fold, that they reduced it to a 15-centimeter gap? From 85 to 70. Have you ever seen a team like another nation doing like that ever? When it
I've
comes to
not.
skin fold?
The only thing that's comparable to, right, is the West Indies and Rakeem Cornwall, right, where there's quite a considerable number of West Indian fans who want him in the side, but then there's some people in management who are like, he's just not fit. I think this is a slightly different scenario. I think we're Bhanuka now. We're at a situation where he's almost like a boxer or a UFC fighter, where it's like he has to have a weigh-in, right, every time he gets selected. I think I agree with you. I think it's too, if he's got himself fit enough for the run, then maybe they could be a slightly lenient on the skin fold test, because I think you're right. I think they've basically given him 3 or 4 weeks to get the skin fold down.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult to do, isn't it? And he's going to end up in a situation where he knows when he's going for this, he's going to end up trying to dehydrate himself and all sorts, right? But yeah, I think they've got to come up with some sort of solution for it. They need to help him out as well. They can't just be throwing him under a bus every few weeks. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, Bhanuka Rajapaksa was just selected for Punjab Kings in the IPL, thinking, he was bought for 50 lakhs. That shows that he was the only batsman also to be bought alongside Dushmantha Chameera, Banindu Hasaranga, Chamika Karunaratne, those players. So, Bhanuka has done incredibly well to, be bought by an IPL team, first of all. And then, that innings against Australia, especially in the 2020 World Cup, highlighted, and he's saved us in couple of matches, in the 2020 World Cup and previously as well, especially that Pakistan tour in 2019, where it highlighted him. And I don't know how he didn't get a chance all these years until 2019, first of all. I really don't know.
Yeah, he's going to go. There's a few players over the years who've had very odd careers for Sri Lanka cricket when they've come in and played some good knocks, and then you've not seen them for a while or whatever. And as it stands, Bhanuka's and going to be in that category, right, where it for some reason there's somebody somewhere, it feels like, who just doesn't like him that much.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe he's just got the wrong surname to get on the Sri Lanka. Who knows?
Very true, very true. So let's go out of Bhanuka's focus and we come to the injury concerns of Sri Lanka right now. So right now, Avishka Fernando, Ramesh Mendis, Nuwan Thushara also out of this Sri Lanka 2020 series due to injuries. And also with that, Wanindu Hasaranga, that's the main story right now. Wanindu Hasaranga is out of the Sri Lanka tour. I mean, he's dropped to number 3 to number 4 right now in the 2020 rankings. He's said to be out of the 2020 series as he hasn't recovered from COVID-19 yet. And then Kusal Mendis and Mahesh Theekshana also are in doubt against India because they have suffered from minor hamstring injuries. So your thoughts, first of all, on Wanindu Hasaranga going to miss yet another series, and could this be really, really bad for Sri Lanka right now? Things are just getting worse.
Yeah, so for me, Wanadu is one of those players you're just like, he's a match winner, isn't he? Like he's the player that you, when you need a bit of magic and you're trying to get a wicket, he's the one who just makes stuff happen, doesn't he? He might go for a few runs, and I suspect as he gets more experience, he'll become harder for batsmen to hit because I think he's quite a clever player. There, I have heard that he may make the second and third T20s, right? If he tests
negative. Yeah. Yes.
Which would be amazing. Also, Hasaranga is going to make a lot of money. He's going to be an absolute superstar, or he is a superstar. He's got the potential, I think, to dominate T20 cricket and T20 franchise leagues and international cricket for the next kind of 10 years at least, if he stays fit. This series in India, playing the kind of main India side in India, could have been one of those moments where if he had a good series, he goes from being a player where there is a bit of buzz around at the IPL auction to being one of the most highest paid players in the world, most highest profile players in the world as well. So on a personal level, I'm gutted for him. From a Sri Lanka level, I think it leaves us with a huge hole to fill. I personally think, I've been telling everyone, I was like, the thing about Wanadu is he considers himself a batsman, right? I think we see him as a spinner now because that's what he's doing and he's really effective at. But I think long term, for me, he's the next Dilshan, he's the next Jayasuriya, right? Because he's gonna. I think, and I could be totally wrong. And I've never spent any amount of time with the players or spoke to any of them or been anywhere around anyone who's coached him. But I think he might end up being an opener for Sri Lanka at some point, opening with Patam Nissanka. I'd love to see that because let's just see what happens. Right. Obviously, I don't think that would have happened this tour, but I think somewhere down the road, it's a giant loss for Sri Lanka cricket whenever he's not available to play.
Yeah, and what do you think of his? He was sold to RCB obviously for 10.75 crores. I mean that's the highest ever been paid for a Sri Lankan cricketer, if I'm not mistaken. So your thoughts? And I mean Hasaranga going for 10.75 back to RCB, where I think in the 2021 second leg he was with RCB as well, and the interest of RCB as well to Hasaranga is immense. So your thoughts on that buy from RCB to get Hasaranga?
Yeah, firstly, what I will say is, this time last year, going into last year's IPL, I was absolutely gutted there was no Sri Lanka players in it. I know in among Sri Lanka fans, there's a debate on whether or not it's good that Sri Lanka players go off and play IPL. For me, I think it absolutely is. Firstly, I think economically it transforms your life if you've made it into that league, just the amount of money into it. Secondly, you want to be playing with the best players in the world. For he will learn so much at his time at RCB. Even if if no one ever talks to him, we never get selected, just bowling at Virat in the nets. He'll learn so much from that. He's as we said, he's a really smart player. He'll pick up so much from it. He'll make a bit of a name for himself. I was really surprised that I thought Mumbai Indians or Rajasthan Royals might have tried to get him a bit more. I watched I think almost every ball he bowled in the second leg for RCB. Second when the IPL restarted, I felt firstly the pitches that they were playing on, it got slightly better for him during the World Cup and then the subsequent T10 leagues. but the pitches that they were playing him on did not suit his style at all. But I also think they weren't fully prepared to go full in on him. Well, I think when you've got with Sri Lanka at the moment, when they're playing white ball cricket with him, they know that he's the main bowler. He's the one that's going to make things happen, and everything else is built up for him in a way, right? So the seamers who come in before him, they just want to go for as few runs as possible, and then one or two comes in, and you might hit him for a 4, but he's going to get you out the next ball. And I don't think RCB were fully prepared for that. I think if you look at how much money they spent on him, I think they kind of understand him a bit better, or they want to try and understand him a bit better. So I think it's great for him, and it's great for Sri Lanka cricket, and I think it's only going to make him a stronger player.
And talking about more injury concerns over here, especially Avishka Fernando, Ramesh Mendis, and Murali End Thushara also being out of the Sri Lanka 2020 squad to India due to injuries. Your thoughts on Avishka Fernando, and your thoughts, I mean, especially Mahela made him to bat at number 4 for the 2020 World Cup. That failed. Then he came back to number 3. So your thoughts, I mean, in the Australian series, so your thoughts overall, because his average isn't that great in 2020 cricket, and his strike rate also is under 100. So do you think that he should focus more on the 50 over rather than the 2020, or do you see some talent in Avishka that he can still be there in that 2020 squad for Sri Lanka?
Yeah, for me, definitely in every squad going in for Sri Lanka, T20, 50 over and test matches, right? I think where Avishka, he's clearly got the talent. If Mahela can see it, Mahela, look, Pavan, I think you're great, but Mahela knows a lot more about cricket than either me and you do, right? If he can see it and he thinks you should be in the side, get him in. I think with Avishka, right, I put him in that same category in terms of talent as I would do Pavan Hewage and Hasaranga, and I'm sure we'll talk about those two at some point as well. Yeah. But I think for him, it's almost like a mental game. And I wonder if they need to get a sports psychologist or someone to work with him, because when Avishka's in, he just looks so beautiful, doesn't he? He's amazing. We'll all remember his knocks in at the 2019 World Cup, and he's had some great knocks subsequently. He's just not doing it consistently enough. I would like to see him at 4 as a fixture. Don't move it. Just say, right, you got 10 matches. Let's talk about it after there. I get the impression, again, I must say, I've never spoken to him. I get the impression he's a confidence player. You put confidence in him and he'll pay it back to you. And I don't.
Are you concerned about his strike rate to average right now in 2020? Because he's played around 35 2020 matches. When I checked ESPN, and his average is around 14 or 15 if you check it out, and his strike rate is less than 100. So are you a bit concerned about his average and the strike rate and his failures in the first 2 2020s against Australia?
I'm slightly I'm not concerned about the average, right? I don't think at the stage of his career he's in, you should look too much in the averages. I say that. I look at all the averages all the time. I'm more concerned about his strike rate. It's not just him. There's a few other players as well that I think their strike rates are a bit low. What I will say though is I think there's a huge jump between playing domestic cricket and playing international cricket, and then there's another jump again from playing in Australia, if you haven't played much in Australia, or playing outside of Asia, to playing in Asia. And I think we need to give some of the lads a bit of leeway on it. It feels like Avishka's been around for ages, because he made his debut, 2017, 2018, was it? Maybe even a bit earlier. I can't remember.
Not earlier, definitely. I think 2020 he started in 2019 against South Africa, 2020 international. Yeah, okay. And his ODI debut was 2016 against Australia. So he started his ODI before his 2020 and hasn't played test matches yet. Yeah.
It's unbelievable to me he's not played a test match, actually. I hadn't noticed that. But I also think he's been so desperately unlucky with injuries as well. Again, he's injured. He had surgery, I think, last night at the time of recording this, and he's going to be out rehabbing for about a month. So, in all likelihood, he won't play against India as well. To me, he looks like he's going to be some.
He's 3 to 6 months out, if I'm not mistaken, with his knee injury. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's unfortunate. Hopefully he comes back stronger. I think what they should try and do with him is send him, if they get a window, send him away again and send him to Australia or England or South Africa or somewhere, and just get him to be immersed in a different culture and just go back to enjoying his cricket. And slowly bring him back up to the level we know we can get to with him. But I think with him, he's got all the right qualities to get runs. The only thing is he just needs to make sure he's in the right kind of headspace, I think. But again, as I say, I've never spoken to him, so maybe there's something else going on.
Yeah. And talking about Nuwan Thushara, I mean, this is another big blow. I mean, he bowled very well, if I'm not mistaken, for his debut, and then suddenly gets injury after bowling 2 overs in the next match against Australia. And again, he's out. I mean, he has a sort of a similar action to Lasith Malinga, as we watched him so in the past. So, your thoughts? I mean, this is another blow for Sri Lanka. I mean, losing some young talent, and he did very well in the LPL as well, LPL season 2. So your thoughts on Nuwan Thushara missing yet another opportunity? I mean, because the 2020 World Cup is getting closer, and perhaps he could get a chance as well, maybe in the squad at least. So yeah, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I thought he was a breakout star in the first LPL. Then he comes back in the second one and has an even better series. I thought this was the right time after that second Lanka Premier League to give him a go. I felt after the first one was a little bit too early for him. If I'll be honest, I still thought he had too many balls that were going a bit stray. I feel again it's desperately unlucky and unfortunate to get an injury. Right. What I will say, and I know you're going to ask about Ramesh Mendis shortly as well, is that I can't remember a time when Sri Lanka had so much depth in bowling talent. I think with Chamira, Fernando, and Larry Kumara, they've got three. I think brilliant seam bowlers over there. Two or three quite fast players, right? I think it's going to be difficult. I think Nuwan Thushara at this stage is looking to be that kind of fourth option. But I think that's when you look at the other three players, I just wonder if that we've just got to acknowledge that at some point they're all going to get injured, and they're therefore having, we need to have four and just hope that at any one time 2 of them are fit. I do wonder though, right? Because I know Hasaranga's injury isn't an injury as such; it's COVID that's kept him out of this.
Yeah.
But Sri Lanka have a lot of injuries at the moment, and I do wonder if they've got to look at the way players are training and look at ways to be more preventative with injuries.
Yeah, very true. So let's go and analyze the squad since we've passed the 30-hour mark and we haven't spoken much on the squad yet. So I think it's the same sort of similar squad. I mean, for the Sri Lanka that went to Australia, obviously, but slightly changes. I mean, few changes. I think Azhaan Daniel comes for the first time in the squad. Shiran Fernando is also back. But your overall thoughts? I mean, first of all, Mahesh Theekshana and Kusal Mendis could be a doubt since both of them are having hamstring injuries and they are under MRI scans. Obviously, tomorrow, so we'll know whether they'll play the first 2020. But I think they are very doubtful and most likely to miss tomorrow's match. So again, I mean, if you don't have Kusal Mendis and Mahesh Theekshana, I mean, especially the spin department, we don't have the two best spinners for Sri Lanka right now. So I'm a bit concerned because I mean we have Bandersay, but I'm not a bit impressed. I mean, Jai Vikrama has impressed me more than Bandersay, and especially because he's a spin-friendly crack in India, and the way they have to adapt from the Australia conditions to the Indian conditions are not going to be easy. So your thoughts? I mean, Asha and Daniel is also there. If they want, they can give a debut to him. But yeah, your thoughts? I mean, missing the two key spin attacks. I mean,
I
for Sri
think
Lanka right now.
missing that eight overs that you could get out of Theekshana and Hasaranga are massive for Sri Lanka, right? I thought Theekshana had an incredible tour to Australia. I really wanted to see what he was going to do on Indian pitches. I also think that it would have been if he makes it at some point. I think he'll get a load of confidence. For me, this whole tour and even the Australia tour is about building towards that T20 World Cup, right? And you just want to get as close to the team that we know or that we think we're going to get and see what they can do. Kusal Mendis, I'm gutted that after the innings that he put in that last game against Australia, I'm gutted that he's not available as well. Hopefully they come back soon enough. There's you mentioned Jeffrey Wandersay. I don't think he's really had much of enough of a chance at this stage.
But
I'm
he was
interested
very
to
bad
see.
in the 2019 World Cup. That's the thing. I mean, especially he leaked a lot
Yeah,
of runs and didn't get much wickets.
but bowling in England, spinning in England, so it's so difficult, especially because at that World Cup, I think Sri Lanka ended up playing most of their games up north as well, like in Durham and Lancashire and places, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah.
Um, I I'm interested to see now that they're kind of two frontline spinners are taken out, who ends up starting. I couldn't. We're at 24 hours away, or less than 24 hours away, and it's impossible for me to pick who how they replace them. I don't know whether they go Bhanuka Fernando, Jamira, and Kamara, and then try and maybe a Van der Sar on top of that, and then try and the other overs just go round a bit and see what they do. Um,
But don't you
it,
think that two spinners might be a must in Indian conditions? Because I mean, especially in Dharmashala, if I'm not mistaken, it's sort of a really spin friendly track, and usually India also go with two spinners. Though, don't you feel that they can include a Jai Vikrama? Because I mean, in the last 2020, he did impress me a lot against Australia, especially in tough conditions. Especially, I mean, given your first 2020 match in Australia and you're doing so well, I mean, can't Jai Vikrama also get a chance? Because I'm impressed with him in Test cricket. He's doing okay in 2020 cricket. He didn't get a chance in the squad for the 2020 World Cup, but I feel like there's some potential for Jai Vikrama to do well in all three formats. Mark, you're muted. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry about that. It's my fat fingers strike again. I think, but basically, they've got to go out to the pitches and see who thinks they can get what out of them. I kind of agree that Jaivic Rama probably deserves a chance, but I think you take a Van der Sar to Australia, you've kind of backed him, you've picked him there as your third or fourth. I
Third, I
can't
think.
remember
Third, third.
yeah. So let's go with it. I mean, I thought Ramesh Mendis against the West
Yeah.
Indies in those Test matches was superb as well. So
Unfortunate that he's also out due to injury, because I mean, if Hasaranga was there, not there, I think the likely replacement, I mean, that all round replacement would have been Ramesh Mendis. And since he's also not there, I think there's a huge gap, especially in that number seven. I mean, Charmika and Dasun Shanak have been doing a tremendous job, especially Charmika with the ball has been brilliant. So maybe he can be our number seven option. But I mean, in my opinion, when we have those two seeming options at number six and seven, I think, in my opinion, I mean, Sri Lanka might have to go with two spinners, and that would be definitely Van der Sar and Jai Vikram if they are in. I mean, both are there in the squad, and obviously not having Theekshana and Hasaranga will be a huge loss for Sri Lanka cricket right now against the number one 2020 side, obviously, which is India. So it's going to affect them massively, I would say, right now.
yeah, I mean, I know Asalanka does a bit of spin, but I don't think it's not the kind of spin you want to be playing. Or you want to be putting down the track to some of those Indian batsmen, right? It's very part time, isn't it? So
Yeah.
hopefully, if he does come on and does have to bowl at some point, then he proves me wrong and he gets a hat trick or something. But yeah, it's a real shame because, as you say, I think Hasaranga out the side really unbalances it because you've got to make up those overs from somewhere, and I think what we haven't really seen much of him, or I say no, I'll rephrase that, is that I think when he comes back in, they need to put more responsibility, give him more batting responsibility, and be like, right, we're relying on you to get some runs. But for me, Charmika had such a good season good calendar year last year, and
Yeah.
he's slowly becoming one of those senior players in the squad, isn't he? Where you throw the ball at him to get to try and do something. And you see if you can finish off and get you over the line when you're batting as well.
Yeah, Naveen here says looking forward to see Janit Lianage class innings. Unfortunately, in the last 2020, he got run out by I mean, Kusal Mendis obviously at the other end made Janit Lianage to run out obviously. But I saw there's some sort of talent with this guy. Seriously, I mean, in Australia also, even though he only scored 8 runs, I saw that he has that sort of patient he's a sort of a patient guy, and he takes time to get the innings along, but we need that anchor role. I mean, especially when DDS is not there once again, in this squad. Your thoughts on Janit Lienage and how you saw him for the Double Giants in the LPL, since you followed the LPL a lot. So your thoughts, I mean, he's the emerging player obviously from the LPL. So your thoughts on Janit Lienage?
Look, I think he definitely needs a run in the team at some point. It's interesting what you said about he takes a while to get going, because I think I think the biggest issue in Sri Lanka with the T20 side is that when we bat slightly naive, and that too many times we let Australia get 2 dot balls in a row, and even sometimes I think even 3 dot balls in a row, and that actually there's too many players who are playing that kind of anchor role, quote unquote, and that's why when we talked about Bhanuka earlier, I was like, there's a good argument where you just got to get him in, because when Sri Lanka arrived in England for their white ball series with England last summer, my main aspiration was bat 20 overs. Like, I don't care what you get, just try and don't embarrass yourselves and get all out for 58 in 12 overs. Sri Lanka are over that now. That stage of our development is past. We are at a stage now where we know we can bat 20 overs. We know it's not just 6 or 7 batsmen we've got. We know that there's a good clutch of batsmen. I think there's probably about 8 batsmen. As you mentioned, DDS isn't even in the squad. So if you're coming in, like Lineage is going to come into this team at some point, he's got to come in. I think he's just got to start hitting from the get-go, or he gets himself into a position which Sri Lanka are getting increasingly good at now. The management and the captaincy, they are sending people in at a time to do a specific role. So I think he's got to come in and be like, what is my role? And we can't be planning for having players who are coming in anymore. We can't be saying, right, what happens if we lose 3 wickets in the power play? That doesn't, that as a team, they've got to put in their minds to be like, that is not happening anymore. We're not losing 3 wickets on the power play. If we're 2 wickets down, then we just bat the power play, and then we get to the other side of it, because I think there's enough players now who have got enough quality and enough experience at international cricket to be able to get themselves to a point, and then we know that when they get into the kind of last 8 overs, we can start to put an innings together. So when he gets his chance, he's got to figure out where he sits and all of that, and how he does it. I definitely want to see him have a chance. I think he's deserved it. I think he had a great LPL, and his tour to Australia kind of was slightly unfortunate as well, but he definitely needs another go.
Yeah. One more question before we go to the Indian squad, because the fans are asking us to do for the Indian squad as well. We'll do that definitely. But final question before we go with the Indian squad and then analyze both in a short time on Chamira and Lahiru Kumar. Do you think both of them can fit into this playing 11, or do you feel like we need a Bhanuka Fernando in this playing 11 tomorrow? Seeing that he's a left arm pace bowler, he can swing definitely in the power play, get those crucial wickets in the power play, as we saw in that West Indies match. And then Lahiru Kumara's death bowling is a bit of a concern, but I mean, if we manage Lahiru Kumara well in the power play and maybe in the middle overs, that will work. But do you feel like should they go with a Chamira and Bhanuka Fernando only, or should they try to go with a Chamira and Lahiru Kumara, seeing they can both bowl at 145, 150 kilometers power? So your thoughts? I mean, Bhanuka was unfortunate since he got COVID, so he couldn't play the remaining 2020 matches, and then Lahiru Kumara took advantage of it. But still, your thoughts on that, on the fast bowling?
For me, Chamira plays every game. He's the one who's got most control over the ball, I think, off our current batch of seamers. And then I really like both of them. I thought Bhanuka Fernando had an incredible tour to England last summer, and then we kind of didn't see him much, and I was a bit surprised we didn't see a bit more from it at the T20 World Cup. I think Lahiru, he's still so young. The thing I like most about him, though, is his attitude, right? Because sometimes some Sri Lankan players over the years have been a bit we're a bit too hospitable to the opposition. Lahiru doesn't take nothing, man. He's going to come back at you and get in your face. We all remember against Bangladesh. I can't remember who was he shouting at David Warner at some point during the World Cup as well. I love that. I love to see that combative nature on the cricket pitch.
Mm.
I mean, I said earlier maybe you could play all three of them, but if you probably don't need to, you probably can't really justify that with Hasaranga away or not there, and we know what the pitches aren't going to be friendly to them anyway. I think it might be a case of making the call in the morning. I do think though, I mean there'll be a lot of international cricket teams looking at the Sri Lanka's bowling options and going, that's quite tasty. I quite fancy that. I mean, all those three bowlers we're talking about right now, if they were English, I think they'd definitely be in and around the white ball squad. And if they wanted to play Test cricket, they'd all be in the Test team as well. I'd
Yes.
imagine. Like,
So yeah, let's go to the Indian team now, because we spoke a lot on Sri Lanka cricket, and I know guys, we are I mean, I'm Sri Lankan, so I take a bit of time when it comes when Sri Lanka plays a series. But definitely, we won't forget the opposition. Obviously, India. I mean, currently they're number one 2020 ranking. So congratulations to India first of all. And I mean, your initial thoughts. I mean, India, obviously, we know they are a strong side, and they obviously are the favorites to win this series. But they are without key players. Obviously, they don't have Virat Kohli, they don't have Rishabh Pant, they don't have. I mean, they are rested and KL Rahul through injury, and they're further deeply affected because they don't have Deepak Chahar, who's out of the series due to I mean, a side strain, and Sky is out. I mean, Surya Kumar Yadav was the man of the series and man of the match in the last West Indies series. I mean, with a, I mean, he scored a brilliant knock, and unfortunately he's out also due to a hairline fracture in the hand. So your thoughts on these five key players out for India? And do you see India? So, I mean, India obviously strong team, but do you see Sri Lanka at least having a chance now, a slight chance maybe to maybe get? I mean, to maybe win a match at least, or maybe win the series, or yeah, your initial thoughts on this India squad also? Yeah,
yeah. So, India are number one ranked in the world, and that's totally justified. I think.
yeah,
I think they've got the most strength in depth. They've got some incredibly talented players. If we are looking at this from the perspective of Sri Lanka are looking to build to the World Cup, I think then this is a good squad for Sri Lanka to play against. That all the players that are missing would have caused Sri Lanka a lot of problems. But that said, I mean the players that they're bringing in are are class as well. I mean, like Sandy Sampson, I don't even know if he'll start, but he like for me, I love watching that guy play. I
mm,
mean, he kind of he reminds me of he's like Sanath reborn or Dilshan reborn, right? It was amazing to me. I think he made it what his debut one of the formats quite recently, and I was like, wow, I can't think of a more talented player. He's had to wait so long, considering he's been doing it in the IPL for ages to make his debut. I mean, there's so many, Rohit and Bumrah pretty much in their positions, they're more or less the best players in the world, right?
yeah,
But Bumrah, obviously, for me, he's so heavily influenced by Sri Lankan cricket over the years.
mm,
You can tell, like, he's like the
that's
son of
Malinga.
Malinga, yeah. And then Rohit Sharma again, like he's the son of Sanath, isn't he? So maybe that's why in the last kind of year or so, Indian cricket has been, or the BCCI have been so generous to Sri Lankan cricket because they understand the impact that Sri Lankan cricket's had on them. There's what I do think about Sri Lanka's playing this slot is that I think there might be this is a good time to play India. I think after the back off the back of that South Africa tour, I think it's in a bit of disarray. The India kind of the national side. I
Yeah,
don't think it's a crisis or anything like that. They've obviously just had a change in management as well. There's this whole issue with Virat at the captaincy. Virat not playing, I think, is it keeps the circus that is around him away from it, which I think is possibly good for our players, as in the Sri Lankan players.
yeah.
But again, like Ishan Kishan and oh my god, they've got so much talent in their side, haven't they?
True.
Jadeja.
Jadeja is back. I mean, Jadeja and I think one more. I mean, Sanju Samson is back, obviously, in the 2020 squad. But yeah, your thoughts on Ruturaj Gaikwad, because I mean this is the player I want to watch mainly, because I think he may get a chance, maybe because now since Sky is out, that number 3%. I mean Virat Kohli is out, Sky is out, Pant is out. Maybe he could maybe open with Ishan Kishan, maybe make Rohit Sharma bat at 3, or maybe Gaikwad can bat at 3. So your thoughts on Gaikwad, because he's such a talented player, and I feel like he can be the next CSK captain also, since I mean, CSK didn't by any sort of try to approach any Indian captain. I feel like Gaikwad is over there. I mean, they retained him to maybe see. I mean, having a future for him, obviously. So, your thoughts on Ruturaj Gaikwad? Then, I mean, do you think that he definitely get all 3 matches for this series, or do you think it's like too early for him, and maybe it will take some more time for him to be in that playing 11 for India?
I don't think it's too early for him. I think if he's given the opportunity, and I suspect he may well be, then he's got to take it, right? We talked about strength and depth in Sri Lanka, in some parts of Sri Lankan cricket. The strength and depth in India cricket is unbelievable, right? And if you're given an opportunity, the thing is that you can't let it slip. So if he gets his chance, he's just going to go with it and try and do something with it. I'd be really surprised if Rohit didn't open though. So
Yeah.
I don't know where they'll all end up, who will end up batting where, but I think he will get a chance at some point. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. Like what happens? I think when India came over to Sri Lanka last summer. Oh, sorry, in last
To Sri
August,
Lanka.
wasn't it? Yeah,
That's
sorry.
correct.
Yeah, I felt the India players were slightly underprepared for what Sri Lanka were going to serve them up.
But I
Um,
think a lot of players got affected in the 2022, especially of COVID, if I'm not mistaken. About 8 or 9 players were
yeah,
affected, and then they played a B team or a C team, as Indian fans say, and somehow Sri Lanka won. I mean, even in the ODIs, I think India beat Sri Lanka 2-1. So, I mean, in that series, I think the last match also certain players were rested. So, I mean, still, I mean, in India, it could be a test though for the Sri Lankan players, especially. Yeah, I mean, both teams are missing key players, so this could be a very interesting series. I mean, expect it's not just India who are not having key players; it's even Sri Lanka who's not having key players due to either injury or COVID. So yeah, this could be interesting. But yeah, your thoughts? Yes, still, yeah,
I agree. I think it's a really interesting series. I think this is a series for both sides where there'll be players wanting to put their hands up and say, right, we've arrived. This is a time to make a name for yourself if you're a player, right? I always think if you get into the national side is half the job, right? The real part of the job is what you do when you're in that shirt. And this is a moment for all those players to stand up and try and make a name for themselves, right?
yeah.
And get every kid in the world who's playing cricket wanting to be the next Sanju Samson.
Very true, very true. But I also want to talk about this now. Brilliant player for KKR, and has been doing very well to adapt, especially he opens for KKR, he plays in the middle order, did very well in that West Indies series. I'm talking about Venkatesh Iyer, obviously. He can bowl also a few overs. He's a really, really talented player, and especially his fielding is also phenomenal. So your thoughts on Venkatesh Iyer and his rise, I mean, to the international circuit for Team India. And
Yeah,
talking about, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
continue.
I was just going to say, I think with Venkatesh, in India have had a few problems with getting these players in and then giving them enough opportunity for them to really, I think, establish themselves in the side. I think a lot of that, it goes back to just what I was saying. Where I was like, I think they've got so much strength and depth that the temptation is to pull them in and out. Right? When you talk about, and I'm sure in a week or so we'll be talking about this anyway. When
Yeah,
we look at the test team and the whole conversation around the Indian middle order, it's about the art of good management, and this is, I think, where India are at, and it's so far ahead of almost everyone else in the world when it comes to cricket. Is
true.
when is the right time to put players in, and when is the right time to pull players out? What do players have to do to retain their place? And I think that's the bit that the management around the Indian cricket team is slightly struggling with at the moment. If you look at when they're losing matches, they're never losing matches by a lot. They're not getting thumped. It's just the kind of fine marginals that are winning it. And I think that's what I mean. If Venkatesh gets a chance, if Gaikwad gets a chance, they're just going to try and stake that claim and make themselves undroppable. I think like the kind of precedent for this in a way is Washington Sundar when he comes in that Australia series, right? He kind of gets a chance almost out of nowhere, right? Because of injuries and players having to go home and all that. And you're kind of thinking, I remember him coming on and thinking like, and then bringing him on and I was like, is he a bit undercooked for Test cricket? He just takes the chance, doesn't he? He's just doing everything he can, and he performs. And now he's like one of those names. I'm like, oh, Washington Sundar, man, he's wicked. Like, and I'm grateful that they haven't picked him for this series.
Yeah. Rohan here says Bumrah's spell could be crucial this series on his comeback, and yeah, especially his vice captain, and he was given a rest obviously for the West Indies series, and yeah, I mean Bumrah and Jadeja back, I mean definitely straight away walking into the playing 11. I mean they didn't even miss Jadeja much. I mean he's obviously a three format player. I mean he can bowl, he's a good fielder, brilliant fielder, one of the best for India. Then when it comes to his batting, they really didn't miss Jadeja or even Bumrah for this series against West Indies. So that's the depth that India has right now in their squads. So your thoughts. I mean, especially on Jadeja, we spoke a bit on Bumrah, but Jadeja back, and it's good to see him
Jadeja
back.
for me, he's like the ultimate T20 player, right? I mean, he's going to get you runs. He's going to make 20 to 30 runs batting down the lower order, coming around, arrives at the crease and smacks it about. He's potentially going to get you wickets as well. And then in the field, when he's not batting or bowling, he's going to stop the opposition making about 20 runs. So like you add that all up, and he's just class, isn't he? He's not. There's no team in the world that isn't picking him. And to top it all off, if that's not annoying enough, he's also an incredibly good-looking man as well. Like, what can't he do?
Very true, very true. Yeah. So yeah, let's go back to the Sri Lanka squad. Is it possible for you to do a playing 11? I mean, if possible for Sri Lanka and India, is it possible for you, or is it a bit difficult for you to come up with a playing 11?
I'd much rather I'd do a Sri Lanka 11, a India 11. I'm a bit out of it because I haven't looked at what they've been saying recently, and also I can't remember what the last team was.
But for Sri Lanka, I mean, because this is a Sri Lankan audience, so mainly, I mean, Indians do watch, but I mean, mainly it's Sri Lankans who are watching, since I'm from Sri Lanka as well. But yeah, it will be good if you can say Sri Lankan playing 11 as well, if possible. Yeah.
Are we going with Kusal Mendis being available or unavailable?
I think he might not be available for tomorrow, but we are not yet confirmed about this yet. He may be missing the Indian 2020 series. That's what the news is coming up. I'm really not sure though with his hamstring injury.
I'm only looking this way because I've got the list of the squad list. So obviously for me, Patam Nasanka every day is opening the batting. You'd want him there with Kusal Mendis, but we think he's unavailable. So I think Gunatilaka is going to have to come back in to open with him. At number 3, Hasaranga. I think that's the.
In your thoughts, why the Sri Lanka cricket is always changing Azhaan? Because I mean, for the Australian series, I couldn't come to that point. I mean, Australian series, he was batting at number 4, and when he was doing so well in the 2020 World Cup at number 3, why isn't the selectors? I mean, the interim coach, I mean, Ramesh Ratnayake is not sticking with Charit Asalanka right now at number 3.
I have absolutely no answer to why they're not doing it. To me, like, sometimes you see like Sri Lanka's playing 11. I think the Papare do a thing where they put the playing 11 and they put the players in who are like sure picks, right?
Yeah.
For me, for the next decade, in any format, just have Nasanka at 2 or 1, whether he wants to face the first ball or not, and then Asalanka at 3. That's all I want. The only time that doesn't happen is if one of them's injured, right? Those are your 2 anchors. Like we're going with them. I would personally, I'd also like Avishka Fernando at 4. Obviously, he's injured at the moment, so that can't happen. And then I also think Hasaranga is a sure. If he's available and it's the right format for him, then he's in the team as well. And then almost every other position, the way I see it, is at this point is up for grabs. I mean, that could change as well in the future. Chimera as well. Sorry, he's the only other the one as well.
Yeah.
Right, so we're at 3. I think at 4, we're probably gonna. Oh gosh, Sri Lanka's squad is really thin with all the injuries, isn't it? We'll have to
Maybe
have.
Janit. Yeah.
Pardon?
Maybe Janit Lienage at 4. Maybe. I mean,
Yeah, I
let's.
was gonna go Lineker at 4, Chandimal at 5, and Sharnaka at 6. Charmaka at 7. And then you'll have to go with, this might not be the order they bat in, but Chamira at 8, Lahuru at 9, and then Jai Vikrama at 10, and I'd say Van der Sar at 11, on the basis that it's a dry spinning pitch.
Yeah.
If not, then I'd bring in Bhanuka Fernando. But how would you change that much?
No, I won't. I think that's the same playing 11 that I was also going for.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the same. That's the exact same playing 11 that I would have gone off. Yeah, I would have preferred 2 spinners. Yeah, but I kept that Binura option also. But yeah, especially for the fast bowling, I would have brought in Binura instead of Kumar. That would have been my only change if possible. But otherwise, I think it's the same playing 11 in my opinion as well. Yeah, there's no question. Yeah,
What I will add is, I think when they get to Australia for the T20s, for the World Cup, sorry, I think
yeah,
all 3 of those fast bowlers are playing.
yeah, sure, definitely, I agree.
Yeah, and I think the tour we've just had will be an invaluable experience for all of them. Like,
yeah, and Azhaan here says Indian playing 11: Rohit, Rutraj, Sharaj Iyer at 3, Sanju Samson at 4, Hood at 5, Venkatesh Iyer, Jadeja, Bhuvneshwar Kumar, Yuzvendra Chahal, Jasprit Bumrah, Siraj. Um, who are we forgetting over here? I mean, that's a good side. I mean, Sanju Samson, I would have preferred him batting at 3, and maybe Sharaj Iyer bat at 4. That's his usual spot time in his number 4. Obviously, Sky is a miss. Yeah, but otherwise, yeah, I do agree with his playing 11 as well, since they're missing players. But where's Ishan Kishan? That's the only doubt about me, Azhaan here. I would have definitely brought in Ishan Kishan over here, and maybe open with Rohit and Kishan, and then maybe bring in Ruturaj at 3, or he may be out. I think maybe Sanju Samson will come at 3, Sharaj Iyer at 4, and then at 5 maybe. Yeah, that's a kind of a problem. 3, 4, 5 without Sky, Virat Kohli and Rishabh Pant right now. Don't you agree?
I think Huda is. I would drop Huda and pick Kishan, and I don't know who would keep wicket between them, but that's,
Yeah,
I think, more or less what my team would look like at this point, possibly from who they've got available. I
yeah. I
mean,
think the others are. I agree with that though. I agree
yeah,
with that though. Yeah.
yeah.
Ashutosh here saying was looking forward to Hasaranga versus Sky. Only Sky played well, Hasaranga well when India toured Sri Lanka last year. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I was looking forward to Theekshana as well, seeing what he could do against the Indian batsmen and the problems that they're caused. I mean, obviously we'll see all this in the IPL now, because Theekshana and Hasaranga are both playing in the IPL. So maybe it's just the universe wants us to wait a little bit longer to see these matchups. But I do think that. The Sri Lanka side's a lot more competitive than people outside of Sri Lanka realise at this stage, and I think there's some quite hungry players. When the mega auction happened, I was really surprised to see that both Asalanka and Nisanka didn't get contracts, and I suspect when they're in India, both that would be something that would be in both of their minds, that they really want to go and do something to make sure that next time around, or when players are looking for to bring in some players, replacement players, that they're at the forefront of people's thoughts about it.
True. I agree. Ashutosh here says no Narine and no Hasarang. India missed out quality spinners from opposition sides. With main players out, India would have liked if Narine had played similarly Hasarang in this series. Yeah. I mean, without Hasaranga or Theekshana, I mean, most likely Theekshana also could be out of the 2020 series. Let's hope Hasaranga gets a negative PCR test tomorrow and he comes back to the second and third 2020 match. But that could be very unlikely. But yeah, I mean, they're not. I mean, India are also not playing with the key players. I mean, right now, especially with the spin attacks. So could this be a blow for India right now? But I feel like India, I mean, the Asia Cup could help both the teams, I would say, in September in Sri Lanka, and especially the IPL coming up, where obviously 2 months are obviously going to take place, and Hasaranga will definitely be in that playing 11 for RCB, because there is no other option for Hasaranga in that all round spot. But yeah, your thoughts still.
I'm as gutted as anyone that Asaranga's not playing. Right, for me, he's the kind of player that if he's in your team, regardless of who you're playing against, what other members are, who else is in that side, you always feel like you got a chance with someone like him. Sri Lanka have been really fortunate over the last kind of 30 years or so to have these kind of X factor players, your Malingas, your Muralis, and you know even players like Dilshan who out of nowhere can put a performance in, and Hasaranga is just the latest in that production line that Sri Lanka
Yeah.
have had, and it's as Sri Lanka fans we're all absolutely gutted he's not playing. Right, I think you're right
Yeah.
though. He's got a lot more cricket to play. It's really unfortunate because he doesn't even have any COVID symptoms, does he? He's
Mm.
just
I
keeps
think the
testing
Australia
positive.
government is a very bit strict, I think, when it comes to PCR, and I think there is a limit, I think, for them to test negative. I think there's sort of a system going on in Australia, so they don't release Hasaranga until that outcome comes, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's just unfortunate. Hopefully, I mean, can you imagine if he comes up and plays their second and third T20s? He's just what it like. It's kind of like, are you an Avengers fan? Do you watch the Marvel movies?
Yeah, I do. I do.
It's
Yes.
like an end game, when at the end when the Falcon reappears, that'll be what it'll
Yeah.
feel like when Hasaranga walks out onto the pitch in that second T20 game, and spins India all out for like 25. We'll all be over the moon, won't we?
Yeah, we will. We'll definitely will. Last question before we wrap things up, because we've hit the 1 hour mark, and Mark promised it's 45 minutes, but we went a bit over an hour.
That's
But
all right, all right.
but yeah, but what are the odds of Sri Lanka winning this 2020 match and even the series? Or do you think that India will simply whitewash Sri Lanka, or do you feel like this will be very close this time? Like in Sri Lanka, I mean the India C team or B team as they call played Sri Lanka and it was 2-1. But Sri Lanka won the series. But do you feel this time it will be much closer than the West Indies two, at least for India this time, or do you see there is a gap between the competition between India and Sri Lanka?
I think it'll be much closer than the West Indies series. I'm I How do I put this? If India win the first two T20s and therefore win the series, and but beat Sri Lanka by quite a considerable margin each time, and Sri Lanka
Yeah,
win the third one, I don't think there's much to learn from that. If Sri Lanka lose all three, but the margins are tight, like for example the Australia series, that Australia series will go down in history as a 4-1 win to Australia. But actually, in
yeah,
reality, what happened was Australia won two, they drew one, and they lost one, right?
yeah, yeah,
And all the games of the two that Sri Lanka lost, only one of them was really not particularly tight, right? What I want Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka should be at a stage in its development now where they're having competitive games, right? I think Sri Lanka will win a match of the three.
yeah,
But I'm more important about seeing how they compete. For me, Sri Lanka can bowl 20 great overs at whoever they're playing against. They can bat 20 overs, but what they're not able to do is they're not able to bat and create totals. They're not able to bat positively enough to create totals that oppositions will find difficult to chase. So as it stands, if you put Sri Lanka into bat first, you'll probably win, because even though they'll end up getting 20 or 30 runs below what par or below a total that they can defend. And the annoying thing is, from our perspective as Sri Lanka fans, is they'll do it with wickets in hand. So if a pitch needs 180 to get you over the line, they'll get 160 for six, and we'll both be there kicking ourselves in the head, going, how can we do this? But what I will say is I think there's a lot of really impressive Sri Lankan batsmen at the moment, and I think they just lack a bit of confidence sometimes. But game on game, they're getting more and more confidence, more and more confident, and I feel we're like kind of pretty close to Sri Lanka being able to get over these hurdles that they're it's almost a mental hurdle, I think, at this point.
yeah, very true. And Rohit versus Sri Lanka is lethal. Obviously, we know Rohit Sharma's records against Sri Lanka is just tremendous, especially that 264 he played against Sri Lanka in a ODI match, which I just switched off the TV. Obviously, 400, forget about the match. That was one of the worst times I think I watched a bad whitewash for Sri Lanka back in 2017, which I don't think is there currently with this side. I think this side is more talented 4 years later, but still Rohit versus Sri Lanka has always been. I mean, Rohit just loves playing in Sri Lanka. He has some sort of connection or whatever playing in Sri Lanka. So, do you think Rohit will come back? The hitman will come back in form against Sri Lanka once again.
Look, Rohit's class, isn't he? He's just absolutely brilliant. I love watching him. Hopefully, the next 3 games he's slightly out of form. He's been a bit injured recently, hasn't he? He missed the South Africa series, so he's probably well rested. He'll want to put on a good show. This hasn't been the best moment for Indian cricket. It's not a crisis. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. He'll be looking to put a performance in. What I will say, though, is I think the Sri Lankan bowl much better than they have done in recent years. I think he'll find it. Sri Lankan bowlers, even though we've got a slightly depleted squad, we should have enough there to cause them a few problems, at least, I hope.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope so too, being a Sri Lankan fan. And Ashutosh says it'll be a run fest if India bats first, except Pune 2017 first 2020. All matches have been high scoring versus Sri Lanka. So, Sri Lanka, do you feel like they should bat first, maybe, or do you think they should chase? If they win the toss tomorrow in Lucknow, what do you think Sri Lanka should do tomorrow?
I would like to see them bat first, because I think that's where we're having problems. And as I say, I feel like we're building for something else. It's not something. It's not about getting a series win and that's it. It's about building towards the Asia Cup and the T20 World Cup later in the year, right? So I want to see development in the Sri Lanka side. We've seen a lot of development in the last 6 months. I think if we can bat first and put a good total on, and then see what we can do. I back our bowlers. I don't think it's as easy to score runs against Sri Lanka as it used to be. So let's see what happens, right?
Yeah. And Rohan here says dew factor crucial in India, so chasing is preferred. Yeah, I do agree, because I think it's near winter and I think it's played in North India. Obviously, Dharmashala is near Himachal Pradesh, so that side, I mean, close to the Himalayas, obviously, and even Lucknow also is in the north. So, I mean, chasing Sri Lanka has been okay in the last 2 years. I mean, the batting first has been the biggest concern, in my opinion, for Sri Lanka cricket right now, more than chasing. I think they can chase, but batting first could be a big concern for Sri Lanka, especially because they'll have to put 170 and 180. And I don't know how they're going to adapt to playing 4 days. I mean, 20th they played against Australia, and 24th they're playing in India in 2 different pitch conditions. So I don't know how they're going to adapt. So your thoughts on.
Say it like this, right? That the Sri Lanka batsmen aren't in bad touch in Australia. And they're coming over and they are in conditions which are more similar to what they'll be used to, and they might feel confident enough to go at it, right? Remember, when these guys travel, it's not like when me and you travel. They're traveling in all luxury, and they've got everything that SLC can get to them to make it as pleasant an experience as possible is what they're afforded, right? They also, I'm guessing, they would have left as soon as feasibly possible as well. So so it's a very different experience crossing the world being a professional sportsman than it is for us. True. I think.
And Ashutosh says, how worried can while chasing Sri Lanka can score against Harshal and Bumrah at death? Good question over here, especially against Bumrah.
Yeah. So I think this is the thing, right? The frustrating thing for Sri Lanka fans in that Australia series, for me at least, was seeing builds up of dot balls. I never want to look at an over and see 2 dots next to each other when we're batting. Never want to see that. Never. Right. True. And I think in the back end of that series, they were starting to kind of get a grip of that. And stopping it. They won that last match basically because they didn't let that happen. Yeah. So I'm interested to see how they adapt to what India have. I mean, Boomerang in India, man, bloody hell! There's like that's that's as good as it gets, right? And that's why I think this is a really interesting series for a lot of Sri Lankan players, because I think this is the yardstick for where they are in the world, isn't it? Like if you can go to Lucknow and get runs against this India side, then you can do it anywhere in the world. There's nowhere where you should be worried about playing cricket.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and we'll wrap this up definitely in 2 minutes time. But your final predictions for this 2020 series, what do you think will be the score line for in this series?
On Twitter yesterday or the day before, I said I think Sri Lanka lose this series, but they win the Test series. Sri Lanka's Test side is almost now totally different to the team that will play the T20s. I think Sri Lanka will. My prediction is that we'll learn a lot more about Sri Lankan cricket and this team than we do the Indian team. In terms of this is one of those series where you're going to India, you've got to show character, right? Though that said, I mean, playing in Sri Lanka and playing in India are relatively similar. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like India will definitely win this series, obviously 100%. But I feel Sri Lanka might win one match, and that could possibly be in the last 2020 match. Yeah, I mean, Test series I would say will be much closer than 2020, because I feel like we have some sort of settled players, obviously with Dimuth, which will do a test preview very soon after this 2020 series ends. But Test, I feel like we have a better chance, because I mean, back in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, we drew 2 matches, and then I think India won in Kolkata. So, and we didn't play Test matches for 4 years in India though. But I feel like, I mean, Sri Lanka has a much settled squad in 2020s compared to the limited overs, since they have, I mean, they have Dhananjay De Silva going to come back, Dimuth coming back. I mean, they have Amul Denia in the Test squad specialist, Jai Vikramas. So there's several players who have been performing very well. And I feel, even though Virat Kohli and Pant will be back in that Indian Test squad, I feel Sri Lanka can challenge India when it comes to Test series rather than the 2020.
Yeah, I think there's some question marks over the Indian middle order. I think Pujara and Rahane they're not in the squad, are they? So it's almost like a new look Indian batting lineup. And as you say, I think Sri Lanka as a Test side are very settled. And I'm interested to see who Sri Lanka end up bowling in the, who their main bowlers are in that Test team as well. I mean, I'm interested to see who is in that Test with that Sri Lanka Test squad when it's announced, because there's a very good argument that some of the Sri Lankan players shouldn't be in Test cricket and just be saved for white ball games, and I think that's totally fair. But Amul Denia to me is a really interesting player, because I'm not entirely sure why he's not playing any white ball cricket at all at this moment in time.
I think they've made him a Test specialist, and I don't know why Hasaranga is not playing Test cricket. When questioning about Amul Denia playing white ball cricket, I don't know why Hasaranga is not playing Test cricket, but I think that's to avoid injury perhaps. So maybe it's too much for him, the workload that he's getting. He's playing in too many franchise cricket, obviously. So I mean, and especially because of his googly, I would say he bowls most of his googly. I mean, 80% and stock delivery 20%, which shouldn't be in Test cricket. I would say rather, I mean, in limited overs that's fine, but for Test cricket you need to have lot of variations, and Hasaranga still hasn't developed that much yet, which is why I think he's been a bit excluded in Test cricket. Still, I hope he'll come back. He's obviously a three format player, right, Mark? I mean, but the thing is with Hasaranga, what I've observed is that he bowls much of his googly more than his stock delivery, and the proportions of both the googly and stock delivery isn't good when it comes when we are observing in 2020 cricket. I know the googly is very effective, but when it comes to Tests, if he bowls the googly, he'll definitely be hammered for 4 runs even. I mean, or even singles, easy singles for the batsman.
Yeah, you see, I do wonder if he keeps bowling the googly as much as he bowls it, that it might get a bit sussed out.
Your audio, Mark. Yeah. Mark, are you okay? Which in mind. Mark, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, my mic cable dropped out. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think long term he needs to develop variations. I think I think from just listening to what the coaches around them are saying, that they kind of understand this. With regards to whether he should play Test cricket or whether he should play franchise cricket, my take is, and I know it's controversial, let him play as much franchise cricket as he wants. He's going to learn a lot more, and I want
And
Sri
money
Lanka
is a
to win.
factor, obviously, for Sri Lankan players also. So that could perhaps make Hasaranga play much franchise cricket. And I forgot about this question before ending this stream. I have to ask this about this coach dilemma that's going on right now. We haven't got a right. I mean, the current head coach, obviously, after Mickey Arthur leaving, obviously he went to Derbyshire County. There's a lot of talks going on with the short list of players. Now, currently, Justin Langer is in, maybe could be in talks if he's interested for the Sri Lanka cricket. They haven't found a head coach in Sri Lanka for 2.5 months, whereas England and Australia are trying to find a head coach in 1 month. So, your thoughts on this coaching dilemma that's going on, the head coach dilemma going on in Sri Lanka cricket right now?
Well, it seems to me that they obviously had a plan. I think they were going to appoint Paul Farbrace. For whatever reason, he didn't take the job. I'm not a fan of Justin Langer's style and his approach. The issue is if you're a data-driven company, which SLC seems to be, whether it be with regard fat folds or fitness tests or even appointing a coach or manager, then he's got the CV to do it, right? I'm not sure. I've never met Justin Langer, but from what I've seen, I don't know how adaptable he'll be to working with players from a totally different culture to what they have in and around Australian cricket. But what I will say is, whoever is appointed, I imagine the players will approach with respect, and I think that they need to resolve this situation ASAP. Where even if the fix of the situation is we do not currently have a head coach and we appoint on a rotating basis the right person available for the job at that time, there's plenty of people within the game domestically in Sri Lanka who could do a job. Remember, Mahela and is there as a kind of coach. Consultant coach. I remember Tom Moody's director of cricket as well. So there's a lot of other people around Sri Lankan cricket who know how to win cricket games and how to get the best out of people. And I feel in the last 18 months or so, Sri Lankan cricket is generally progressing in the right direction. And that if they come out and say we don't think we need a permanent head coach, if they've got a plan, I think I'm happy with it. I think right now, where the way the situation is slightly unfair, and the people who are having to do the job, because it's kind of like they're in the job to the end of the next series, till the end of the next series, till the end of the next series. And if you're Sri Lankan cricket, the other thing you don't want to happen is you don't want shows like this or Murali End to spend lots of time discussing this topic, because you want to try and have some. It make it feel like you've got some control over the situation, because it just feels like no one's really got control of what's going on. And I know.
Do you feel it was the wrong time for Mickey Arthur to leave Sri Lanka cricket in the first place, when there was some progress in Sri Lanka cricket, and then Mahela deciding to obviously not renew him a new contract, obviously making SLC not to renew a new contract? Do you think that was the right decision when there was some progress with Mickey Arthur, even though we criticized him in the England tour? I mean, even I did criticize him as a Sri Lankan fan, but I did see some progress after that England tour, which is why I'm saying that it was the wrong time for him to be not given a new contract.
I think coaching international cricket is really difficult, right? Because you don't get to work with the players the whole time. And I think also in cricket, more than anything, almost more than any other sports, it's really difficult to make change among teams and to kind of change the way teams perform, right? What I would say is that when he left, I was kind of surprised he didn't renew the contract, right? Because I thought they'd had a great a T20 World Cup that exceeded all expectations. I also think that when they let him go, they probably let him go for the right reasons, because I think they probably felt like he'd taken it as far as he could. I mean, ultimately, what we all want, I suspect, is Mahela just to go, I'm the manager. I don't think that's going to happen for a little while. I think he still wants to go away and make money and win franchise leagues across the world. He's probably the most in demand franchise coach in the world at the moment. If the BCCI couldn't persuade him to take the India job, I don't think, as it stands, Sri Lanka cricket can persuade him to take it. I've heard, there's all sorts of rumours going around of various former Sri Lanka players who might be in the running for it. I think having it feels kind of romantic to have a non-local coach, but actually I think that there's so much innovation in cricket in Sri Lanka and the way it's coached. I think there's a lot to be said about having a local coach as well. I think we should, it's difficult to say how much impact Mickey Arthur actually had on the Sri Lanka team during his tenure. But what I will say is what I did think he did do, definitely, and it's definitely up to him, is that I think he just made people feel good again, when I think there was a bit of a bad feeling about the team not getting the results and not achieving what they wanted. Well, by the end of his reign, I think we all felt good about Sri Lankan cricket. And I think that almost came from top down, right? I think he made you feel $1 million whenever you did something good whenever the players did something good. And he brought a lot of players through. And we should be grateful for it. During the Ashes, when I was having to talk about England's poor performance in the Ashes, I said they should bring. I thought England and Mickey Arthur looked like a match made in heaven, because I think he'll make them feel good again about themselves. And it's slightly unfair that he ended up taking over Sri Lankan cricket during COVID, where bio bubbles and all that became a nightmare, and there's the whole Durham scenario and all that. But I think he did a decent job in the circumstances, and I just think whatever the SLC are going to do about the head coach, they just need to make that decision swiftly. I think one of the ways they can shut these conversations down is by just saying, we've got Tom Moody, we've got Mahela, they've also got that board of former
technical committee,
the technical committee as well. Yeah. And then on top of that, they're bringing in, Malinga's now a fast bowling coach, and they've got all the various other coaches. You just go, we are just appointing on a tour-to-tour basis, and that's it. You don't need to have this big appointment of someone, I don't think.
So you don't think that they need a coach right now, head coach, with what's going on?
As long as there's continuity in terms of, that technical committee, Mahela and Tom Moody, are going to be in place during the World Cup, or getting us to, and not just the World Cup in Australia this year, but the next till the next 50 over World Cup. Then I don't think you need continuity in the management, but you don't necessarily. Essentially, all they're looking for, and there's obviously so much more about this, is somebody to do the kind of day-to-day stuff and talk to the press and run the sessions day-to-day. Right, and pick the team. Well, not even pick the team, because there's a selection committee that pick the team anyway. So that's what I mean. I don't think you necessarily need one person to do that. Like, you don't need to make a big appointment. You could just go tour to tour, I think, till you are dead set. Because look, we'll be critical about SLC not having appointed someone right now. But how many times in the past have they appointed someone? Like Paul Farbrace was in the job for 4 months, 5 months. I know he ended up getting poached by England, and England paid SLC or whatever for him. But they need to find somebody who they know is committed to it. Even Tom Moody had to, he left and then came back, didn't he?
But do you think there's any other English coaches in that domestic cricket, circuit, that can be a Sri Lankan head coach, perhaps, if they're interested? Anywhere. Even from Surrey or Durham or anywhere. The county circuit. Anyone who may be willing, or who's good at it could coach the Sri Lankan team right now, because we have no options. Obviously, no Paul Fabrice, and I don't know with Justin Langer what's going on right now. So we have no options. I don't know from Sri Lanka whether there's any committed coaches right now. I don't know. They're trying to get a foreign coach, which is what I'm trying to see right now, even though they said they wanted a local coach. So yeah.
The person I would love to have is Jason Gillespie. I don't know what how difficult it would be to get him out of his current commitments, or whether he'd want to do the job. But for me, I think he's been a great coach. He's done it in England. He's done it in Australia. He seems a very personable man as well. I'd love to see him in the role. I'm trying to think of other people. For me, I can't think of a standout name from county cricket who would. I'm sure
Even
there's
from
people.
Rockets, I think last time they won the county cricket. I can't remember who's the coach though, but yeah, I mean they've been having a good journey in the county, especially in that last season. Yeah,
What I will say, right, is county cricket isn't as strong as it looks, or as it may be perceived around the world. I mean, in terms of domestic cricket, it's probably the Blast is probably as good as the LPL. The current one-day tournament that SLC have got running is probably as good, if not as stronger than anything that county cricket is throwing up, because there's 18 counties, so the talent is quite diluted through it. So I'm not sure necessarily if county cricket is the way to go in terms of looking for your next for the next Sri Lanka coach. But it's an interesting idea. I like it. Like, and actually, if you look at it, you look at to bring it right round, because we started off about 96. Dav Watmore, he wasn't somebody who was on the on everyone's list to take over when he got the job ahead of the 96 World Cup. So maybe that's the way Sri Lanka have to think about it a bit more, think about outside the box a little bit.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Mark. I think we discussed all the things. And I'm sorry. I mean, we went more than
no worries. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a fantastic discussion, obviously, and definitely I'll edit it when I can so that viewers will watch it as well. But thank you so much, Mark, once again for joining. And please do listen to the Murali End podcast, because they're doing an amazing job. I mean, Mark and his team are doing a tremendous job. So I put the links of the Murali End podcast and their Instagram page, so you can connect with them anytime and maybe ask them questions. So if you have doubts, you can ask anything to them. So yeah, thank you so much, Mark, once again for accepting my invite, and it was a really good discussion. It was great to have you on the sports breakdown.
Anytime, man. Anytime. I really loved it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, and please do subscribe to the sports breakdown. Please click the notification bell on, and like, comment, and share on this video. And please do check out the Murali End podcast on Apple, Spotify, and what else? What are the platforms? So is it only Apple?
All the platforms, on Google, everything. We're on Twitter as well. Follow us at Murali Pod.
Okay, sure. Great to great to receive that. And it was great having a discussion with you, obviously, and hope the best team will win. I mean, it's obviously India favorites, obviously, but let's see if Sri Lanka can give a fight and maybe win one match at least. So all the best to both the teams, and let's see what happens tomorrow. And we'll come up with the series review, obviously, and we'll come up with the test preview as well. So until then, thank you so much and goodbye, guys, for the next video. Bye, guys.